More than 30 college football players hoping to make it to the National Football League met in Ashburn, Virginia for the Washington Commanders local pro day. I've got my 7 favorites from the list, that and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I am your host, David Harrison, with you Monday through Friday right here, but also your eyes, your ears, your friend on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com, and also helping out with WUSA9.com's local coverage, your local CBS affiliate in the Washington, D.C. area. I want to thank you for coming through today. In this episode of Locked On Commanders, we are going to talk about potential punt returners who could be added to the Washington Commanders roster in the NFL draft this year. We're also going to field a couple of questions about the running back position and how that could be impacted this April, but we're going to start it all off with the Washington Commanders holding their local pro day on Tuesday. We got the list. Thank you to the Washington Commanders for providing that list. I'm going to go over about 7 notable names from that list that we could see targeted by the Washington Commanders over draft weekend. Every day, or so those of you who come through for every single episode, I want to give you a special thank you, like I do every day, for coming through every single day. And everybody out there, if you haven't already, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode. If you're new to the show, thanks for finding the show. Welcome to the show. Hopefully you like it. Hopefully you come back and you watch or listen again. Locked On Commanders is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Pro days. So every college, not every college, but most colleges, right, hold a pro day. And there's local pro days. There's several opportunities in the pre-draft process for prospects to get in front of NFL scouts, NFL decision makers, and try to make an impression. Local pro days are just another part of that. And then here's how the local pro days work across the National Football League. If you went to school in the local area determined by the National Football League to be that quote unquote local area, I can't draw you the boundaries of where the Washington Commanders are allowed to pull from. But if you went to school in the local area or you are from the local area, you are allowed to be invited to this local pro day. And so the Washington Commanders brought in over 30 potential NFL players, soon to be potential NFL players. And from that list, we went ahead and we drew about 7 names from there that I think are just incredibly notable. We can't talk about every single one of these guys. So if you have a favorite, personally, whether they went to your high school or they're from your local area or you just really like them, and I don't mention them here, don't take it as a slight. We just can't talk about everybody. So we're basically talking about the guys who are most likely to hear their name called over NFL draft weekend. Of course, some of these guys could end up coming back as rookie camp invites and training camp invites and all that kind of stuff. We're going to start off with one of the top projections here. He's the top rated player on this list, according to Pro Football Focus, and that is defensive tackle Jordan Phillips, who played collegiately at Maryland. He's from Ocoee, Florida. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I don't know the city pronunciation names for all these cities, but hopefully I'm saying that correctly. If you're from there and I said it wrong, I apologize. 4th round projection right now on Mock Draft Database, 6'2", 312-pound defensive lineman. Like I said, he's the number 86th ranked defensive lineman or defensive tackle or player overall, I should say, on the PFF big board. Had 31 solo tackles in the past 2 seasons. Now, looking at Phillips as a player, looks like a nose tackle. He's been praised often for his work ethic, his leadership ability, projects in the NFL to be a gap-filling run stuffer. But right now, it doesn't look like he's got a lot to offer as a pass rusher, which is why, even though he's number 86, which is obviously in the top, 90, 100 picks of the big board, he's currently going most often in mock drafts anyway in the 4th round, early day 3. So could be a late day 3 or day 2 prospect, but certainly also could be an early day 3 because he does kind of lack a little bit of that pass rushing ability on the defensive line. Next up, this guy's actually getting some 3rd round love, but because he's ranked a little bit lower on the PFF big board, we're going to talk about him second. That is safety Kevin Winston out of Penn State. Originally from Columbia, Maryland. He is the 3rd round projection in this year's NFL draft. Comes into 6'1.5", height 215 pounds, number 89 on the PFF big board. Had 1 interception in his career, 5 passes defensed in 3 seasons, 28 games. If you do the math there, that's not a lot of games for 28 or for 3 seasons. Did suffer an injury in his final season, a partially torn ACL in 2024, led to his playing just 3 games in his final collegiate season. Now, he does possess NFL size, displays good tackling ability. His instincts do need a little bit of refinement. He's better playing coverage when he can react to what's in front of him. So things like zone, stuff like that, instead of trying to track all the traffic around him. You don't want him being your single high safety and trying to kind of measure, where guys are going and where this route might go and all that stuff. Medical reviews are going to be a big part of his draft stock that weekend, but he was on a first-round path before he was hurt. So if teams who kind of have been tracking him and thought he might be a first-round safety by the time we got to this point in his career, see some of those intangibles, they like the medicals, you might see a team pull the trigger on him a little bit earlier, but currently projected in the third round. Another safety that was in attendance that's getting early day 3 buzz right now, safety Jonas Sanker out of Virginia. He's from Charlottesville, Virginia, so this is a Virginia dude. Again, early 4th round projections or early day 3, 4th round projections, 6 foot tall, 206 pound safety, number 116 on the PFF big board, had 14 tackles for loss in his career. 9 of those came in 2024. And when you look at Sanker, you're looking at a high energy safety with an NFL frame, solid tackling form that leads to production in the box and behind the line of scrimmage. Like we mentioned, those 9 tackles for loss in 2024 alone. He shows potential in zone coverage, but is at his best coming downhill. He will need to play a little bit more patient to avoid taking himself out of long developing plays in the NFL and getting bitten by, looking at a quarterback's eyes or things like that. So those are a few defenders that are in here, and they're very interesting to me prospect wise. And I think that when you look at, you look at Jordan Phillips, right? Run stuffer, gap filler. He's the type of guy that you look at when we remember Carl Davis being activated from the practice squad multiple times last year. Every time we asked Dan Quinn, every time we asked Joe Witt Jr., why Carl Davis, what was something they said? He knows how to stay square to the line of scrimmage. He knows how to fill his space. He knows how to really kind of hold his own. Doesn't necessarily always make the tackle. Doesn't always necessarily get in there for a loss, things like that. But he's a guy that's really hard to move off the spot. Jordan Phillips looks like that type of prospect. Now, as a year 1 guy, again, he's an early day 3 prospect, the early day 3 projection, right? So you're not looking at drafting a 4th rounder and saying, boom, Johnny Newton and Jordan Phillips, you're our starting D tackles, right? But he is a guy that can come in, potentially play on some bigger run stopping roles or packages. Obviously, he's going to play a little bit of special teams, things like that. But then you can also possibly develop him a little bit. And if you can get a little bit of pass rush out of him, that would be great. But even if he just becomes a really solid run stopper or gap filler for your defense for years to come, there's always going to be a role for those types of guys. These 2 safeties are really interesting to me. Kevin Winston out of Penn State, like he's got the energy, the aggression that you just kind of know that Adam Peters really enjoys and would look really good in a Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn defense. But again, some of the instincts are a little bit concerning. The ACL injury obviously is concerning. But again, I'm not going to get too hampered down by that because I don't have the medicals. I don't have access to them. They do. So if the medicals are bad, we'll know it by Kevin Winston falling in day 3 and even further. If the medicals are good, you may see him go as early round 3, things like that, which would unfortunately probably take him out of the running for the Washington Commanders. But then Jonas Sanker out of Virginia is also a really good prospect. He's a 4th round guy, looking like an early 4th round guy. So if there's a trade back somewhere in there where the Commanders maybe net at, a top 5 to 10 pick in the 4th round, or maybe they move up from their current spot. They have the Houston Texans 4th round from that Laramie Tunsil trade. Another high energy guy. Really kind of looks, he's not as big, right? He's 6 feet tall, but as far as playing style is concerned, really kind of that Jeremy Chin style of player, but a little bit better, I think, as a cover safety coming into the league. So if he can develop a little bit more there, you can also see some improvement there. We do have some receivers that were on this list that we want to look at, and a linebacker. So we'll wrap that up. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by FanDuel. And with FanDuel, the NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel can get you ready for all the action, getting you prepared. New customers get an incredible way to get into the playoff action. Right now, if you're new to FanDuel, you place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether you're picking your favorite team, whether you're diving into the player props, you want to look at 3-pointers, steals, assists, first buckets, all this other stuff. FanDuel has so many ways for you to bet on player props and the game. You can do it straight up, just pick the winner, or you can take the points and figure out where the scoring margin is going to go. Plus, even after tip-off, there are live bets happening that you can go ahead and get a part of. So if you want to do this, I've done this before. watch the flow of the game somewhere around the second quarter, maybe even the third quarter. Sometimes I feel like I've got a grip on it. I go, okay, let me make this little prop here and see if I can't make a little bit of cash off of watching this game. So all kinds of good stuff coming from FanDuel. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com, claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Continuing now, today's episode of Locked On Commanders, talking about, first and foremost, the local pro day that the Washington Commanders held on Tuesday in Ashburn, Virginia. Over 30 players coming. We're breaking down just kind of a handful, well, a little over a handful, 7 players that we really kind of drew my attention because they're most likely to be drafted in this year's NFL draft. We're going to pick up now with a few receivers that were on the list. Ty Felton out of Maryland is the first receiver we're going to talk to. He is actually from Ashburn, Virginia, so didn't have to go far from home to go to this local pro day. 4th round projection currently. 6'1", 183-pound receiver, number 139 player on the PFF big board, had 1,100 receiving yards and 9 TDs in 12 games played in 2024. Great production. 4-year contributor for the Maryland Terrapins, primarily as an outside receiver with the ability to play in the slot if need be. Struggles to get off press coverage, but when he has space, he can make good things happen with his sub 4.4 speed and agility. So Ty Felton, a very interesting prospect, early day 3 window for him. Another interesting prospect that was on this local pro day list, Dante Thornton, receiver out of Tennessee. He's from Baltimore, Maryland. 4th or 5th round projection right now, a little bit of a window for him, but this dude is 6'5", 205 pounds, a 169th ranked player on the PFF big board, 25.4 yards per catch in 2024. That is massive production per catch. Didn't have a lot of catches, though. So he's a top popper, right? He's the guy who's going to try to take the top off the defense. Ran a 4.3 40-yard dash in the scouting combine. Is 6'5". Plays the size, shows some knowledge on how to use his size, along with more traditional football IQ characteristics that you like seeing out of NFL receivers. Now, he's obviously he's a day 3 guy, right? So he's not the most polished prospect coming out into the NFL. But, I mean, look, we've been looking for taller receivers, like guys like Bryson Tremaine have been intriguing. Things like that. I mean, we've been looking for this like tall receiver to kind of really round out this receiver group. I'm not saying Dante Thornton's going to come in as a day 3 pick and just become like the 3rd receiver on the team, but I would be lying to you if I told you that he doesn't have some traits that are incredibly intriguing coming on this year's NFL draft. And obviously the Commanders are getting a front row seat, seeing what that kind of looks like. Wide receiver Caden Prather also on that list, another receiver out of Maryland. He's coming from Montgomery Village, Maryland, and also played college for Maryland. He's a 7th round projection, so he's a end of the draft type of guy. Potentially could slip into being a UDFA. 6'3.5", 204 pounds, the 198th ranked player on the PFF big board. 12 touchdowns over the course of the past 3 seasons of his college career. Deep ball perimeter target, lacking in explosiveness and versatility, will need to prove himself as a blocker and work on using his size to his advantage better than he displayed in college. So he's got some tools, he's got some intangibles, but again, he's a 7th round pick projection. There's a reason for it. He definitely needs some polishing up. We're going to finish this off with a linebacker. One of the linebackers that was in attendance, Jamin Dumas-Johnson out of Kentucky, and this is a name. There's a couple of names on this list, but this is one specific that we actually have had on some mock drafts during the offseason here. He's from Hyattsville, Maryland, currently a 7th round projection, 6'1", 238-pound linebacker, the 236th ranked player on the PFF big board. So right there, kind of at the end of the NFL draft window. 13 sacks and 2 interceptions as an off-ball linebacker. It's pretty good production. One of the more athletic off-ball linebackers in this year's class, started his career at Georgia before transferring to Kentucky for his final season. Even if he doesn't develop into a stud, he should be a guy that you can bring on the team and can contribute on special teams for years to come. Wouldn't mind seeing him added to the mix with Jordan McGee, potentially Dominique Hampton. I've got a mailbag question on Dominique Hampton that we haven't been able to get to yet, but we will get to it. We've got it. We will get to it. Of course, we will get to all of our mailbag questions as we can. Speaking of which, we're going to continue diving into our mailbag here this week, and we're going to start it all off now with Greg. What are the chances, if the Washington Commanders trade back and acquire more picks, that they double dip in a very deep running back class and draft a B-Rob and an Ekeler future replacement? There will be some good 3rd down back options available in later rounds. You're absolutely correct, Greg. I do not think the Washington Commanders will draft 2 running backs. Could be wrong. But obviously, Brian Robinson Jr. is coming back. He's on an expiring contract. His contract is set to expire after the 2025 NFL season. Austin Ekeler is coming back. His contract also set to expire at the end of the 2025 NFL season. Jeremy McNichols is coming back. Chris Rodriguez Jr. is back as an exclusive rights free agent. So all 4 of the backs that they used last year are coming back. Because of that, that's the biggest reason I would say you're probably not going to double dip. However, I do think there's, I don't know, better than 50% chance that they're going to draft a running back, right? I think that, when you look at Brian Robinson Jr. and the way that his body broke down, the way that his production broke down at the end of last year, obviously Austin Ekeler is past his RB1 days, right? So if B-Rob's not your true blue solidified RB1 of the future, you got to take another swing at it, right? And you're right about the depth, right? Round one, Marion Hampton out of North Carolina. He's a 3-down back waiting to happen. He's got some things he's got to polish up, but he's about as complete as they come without being Ashton Genty out of Boise State. Round two, you're looking at guys like Travion Henderson out of Ohio State who could be there, who certainly has some 3-down back potential. Round three, Quinshot Judkins, another Ohio State guy, a little bit less exciting than Travion Henderson, but still has a very good skill set. Round four, a guy like DJ Giddens out of Kansas State could be there. Round five, Brashard Smith out of MSU could be an option. Round six, Basil Tootin out of Virginia Tech could be an option. Round seven, Jaquavius Marks out of USC is an intriguing option. And obviously, the further you get down the list of the rounds, the less likely it is to be the guy is to become an RB1, especially in year two. But there are a lot of options. And listen, I wouldn't say it's not possible, right? Especially in a trade back scenario. If it's a trade back scenario, you're probably not getting a Marion Hampton, right? He's either already gone or the team trading up might be looking to get him, get that 5th-year option on him. But you could look at round two, say a guy like Travion Henderson, and then look, 6th round, Basil Tootin. Like, you know what I mean? If he's the best dude there, and then you bring in B-Rob, you bring in Austin Ekeler, you bring in Travion Henderson, Basil Tootin, Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez, and you just sort it all out in training camp, right? I mean, it would be wild. I know there's been some, I won't say projections, but some speculation about, look, if the Commanders do draft a Marion Hampton, they draft Travion Henderson, do you then trade Brian Robinson Jr. and basically say, like, this dude and Austin Ekeler are going to be our two main backs? We'll figure out the order of them later. I wouldn't necessarily take it off the table either, but, it's certainly an intriguing idea. I just don't know, like if there were a prop bet on FanDuel, will the Commanders draft 2 running backs? I don't know if I would be confident telling you to put money on it. I'll put it that way, Greg. But I think it's a very interesting prospect, very interesting topic. And certainly the prospects are there. Like you pointed out in your question, the prospects are certainly there that if Adam Peters wants to do it, there's talent to be had in every single round and potential. Merle asked another similar running back question. With improvements to the offensive line, can Brian Robinson have a better season, or do they need to draft an RB1? I think if the offensive line can get better, right? So as you see, like B-Rob's injuries obviously had played a toll. 3 injuries suffered to the exact same leg, the right leg, during the course of the season. That's not small. However, you also notice that as Brian Robinson's production went down, the offensive line, their energy, their ability to maintain their energy level throughout the entire game also started to go down. I remember telling you guys, if you're an everyday or throughout the season, coming into locker rooms after some of these games, man, and these guys are just beat. And they're telling me, like, look, it's worth it. You know what I mean? But the body can only take so much. And eventually everything starts to kind of wear down a little bit. You need some backs that can kind of create on their own a little bit, or you need maybe even a rotational alignment. I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe that kind of thing happen this year. And I think you look at the depth that they've signed for the offensive line. We've actually got another mailbag question. Tomorrow's our official full-blown mailbag. So we'll actually answer that question as far as depth on this team, specifically on the offensive line. But, I wouldn't be surprised if you see like some certain packages where guys come in, guys come out, things like that. Obviously, you want your main 5, but adding a 6th here and there and things like that certainly could be in line here. And they kind of tinkered with that a little bit last year, rotating at left tackle, right? So could the offensive line improve as run blockers, and could Brian Robinson have a better season? Absolutely. Will they draft an RB1? Again, I think there's a better than 50% chance they draft a running back. I don't know that I would say they're going to go out there and draft an RB1. Again, there has been the speculation that the Commanders could trade Brian Robinson Jr. if they do indeed draft a running back, but we'll have to see how that all unfolds. So good questions there. We're going to continue to answer 2 more before we get out of here, including how much a quarterback trade increases the capital that the Commanders might get in a trade back, and talking about punt returners late in the draft. And I got one that's still late day 3, but early day 3 for you to consider and keep an eye on as the NFL draft gets closer. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that today thanks in part to our friends over at Chewy. And you've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. And with over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. If you've got an animal, Chewy probably has some things they can help you out with. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health. They've got prescriptions, telehealth vet visits, and there are even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. The auto ship feature is a game changer. You can set up your auto deliveries, so you can just set it and forget it. My family and I, we use that religiously. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 off your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 off your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a little bit of news with the local pro day going down, some notables attending that local pro day, a little bit of mailbag here as we continue to answer as many fan questions, insider questions as we can as we creep ever closer to this year's NFL draft. Next question, actually kind of a conglomerate of multiple questions. So if you asked a quarterback trade related question, you may hear yours kind of answered in part here. How does the prospect of trading back change if the team moving up is looking to take a quarterback? There's always going to be a quarterback tax. The further you get in the draft, the less that quarterback tax matters. And in fact, I would even say maybe it's not even always like, third round, fourth round, somewhere around there. Look, you may be trading with a team that's moving up to get a quarterback, but you're not going to get much of a tax for it. But there is, when you're talking about trading up into the first round with a team who's then going to be trading out of the first round, like the Commanders most likely will be doing at 29, they'll be trading out of day one completely. There's going to be a tax to a team. If you're trying to give me a second round pick or a day two pick as the primary pick in exchange for a day one pick, you're going to pay a little bit of an inflation to get that fifth year option opportunity. If it's also a quarterback, you're going to pay a little bit more of an inflation for that to happen. And I know some people out there say, well, the other team doesn't have to tell you who they're going to take. I'll just tell you, like, in some negotiations, sure, it may not even matter. You know what I mean? But that's not really how this happens. Like, if I'm going to trade a pick with you, if I ask you who you're looking to get, there's probably a good chance that you're going to tell me. And I'm not going to get all the details of. I've had this conversation with personnel, executives and GMs and all that stuff in the past, and it's not as contentious. Like, these draft conversations don't necessarily get as contentious, I think, as that they do a lot of times, especially in like fantasy drafts, right? You've had fantasy draft conversations where it's like, well, I want this pick, what are you going to take? I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to take. I'm not going to give you my strategy and da. They're a little bit more forthcoming with this type of stuff in the real world, right? So some guys like Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, Will Howard out of Ohio State. Those are guys that have gotten some like early day two buzz. If there's a GM out there that really likes those guys and wants to move up for them, perhaps they want that fifth year option, then yeah, you might be able to get that. And look, it could be the difference between, let's say the Cleveland Browns don't take a quarterback with their first pick, so they want to come up and get Jackson Dart at number 29. And let's say the New England Patriots want to come up and get a different player, and I think they're picking 39th, and the Cleveland Browns are picking 33rd. I might be able to get the Cleveland Browns, even though you're already giving me the better upfront pick, 33 compared to whatever 39. I still may be able to get more out of you because I'm like, look, I got the New England Patriots calling me. They're coming up. You want a quarterback here. So if you want to come get this quarterback, you need to give me a little bit extra, and that's where some of these things can come into play. So it certainly could impact it. Certainly could impact the package that the Washington Commanders would get for that 29th overall pick. Certainly not going to prevent a team from wanting to do it, right? Another last question here for this episode. Greg came through. What are the chances that we will draft a primary punt returner late in the draft? I love the idea of someone like Jalen Lane in the 6th round. We need more speed on both sides of the ball, and we can combine that with someone with punt return abilities. Yeah, I love that idea. It's a fairly common practice in the NFL draft. 6th rounders, 7th rounders, you're not just looking for position players, but you're looking for guys that can help you on special teams in other ways, because you know that these guys most likely are not going to be starters on your team right away. Jalen Lane, wide receiver out of Tech, one of those players. You're not looking at him coming in and being a starting wide receiver or even cracking your top 3, maybe not even your top 4, right? He might be your 5th or 6th receiver in the pecking order, but his 4.3 40 time, 68 career punts and 2 return touchdowns could have put him out there as your punt returner, especially with Jamison Crowder not coming back, at least as of right now. Another option who's not as late, not 6th rounder, but day 3, early day 3, wide receiver Torrey Horton. He's another taller guy, 6'2". He's not 6'5" or 6'4", but 6'2", 4.4 time out of Colorado State, 26 career punts, so not as many career punts, but he does have 3 return touchdowns in those 26 career punts. Now, again, he's returning punts at Colorado State against special teams that couldn't hold a candle to an NFL special teams unit, right? But still, you like the production, you like the potential there, and he's got a little bit more potential, I would say, than a guy like Jalen Lane does of becoming a receiver as well in your offense as on top of special teams. So just another option out there. But yeah, I wouldn't hate Jalen Lane in the 6th round at all. So good question there from Greg. Good questions across the board. Some interesting names. Again, if I didn't talk about your favorite, by all means, come through for a future mailbag and say, hey, you didn't talk about my favorite local pro day participant. Can you talk about him in another mailbag episode? And I'll surely put it in mailbag. We'll get to talking about that prospect as soon as we can. To do that, you just got to text me. To do that, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez get you ready with their draft rankings, rumors, and news every single day. The Locked On NFL Draft Podcast on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this episode. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day, every dayers. Thanks for coming through every single day. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, so I can see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.